The small village by the sea was quiet in the early morning light. The sound of waves gently crashing against the shore echoed through the air. Fishermen prepared their boats, eager to set out to sea. Among them was Luca, a young man with strong arms and a heart full of kindness. He wasn't the tallest or the most muscular, but his courage and loyalty to his village made him well liked by everyone. His mother, a kind woman with soft eyes, always spoke proudly of him to the villagers. One morning, as Luca cast his net into the sea, something strange caught his eye. A glimmer of light flashed beneath the water. He quickly dove into the cold ocean, swimming towards the spot. As his hand brushed the sandy bottom, he pulled up a small pendant. It was unlike anything he had ever seen. The pendant was shaped like a delicate fish, its scales made of a shiny golden metal. There was a small stone in the center that glowed faintly. Luca held the pendant up to the sun, examining it. It was beautiful, and something about it felt important. He decided to take it home to his mother. She would know what to do. When Luca arrived home, his mother gasped when she saw the pendant. That's the royal family symbol, she whispered in awe. Where did you find this, Luca? I found it in the sea, Luca replied, confused by her reaction. What does it mean? His mother looked worried. The king's son. He disappeared many years ago. Some say he died, but others believe he was taken away. This pendant belongs to the royal family, Luca. You must take it to the capital. You may have found something important. Luca was puzzled, but he agreed to go. His mother gave him a small bag of food for the journey and told him to be careful. Luca wasn't sure what was waiting for him in the capital, but he couldn't shake the feeling that his discovery was more than just an ordinary find. Luca's journey to the capital was long and tiring. The road was rough, and he often had to stop to rest. He walked through forests, crossed rivers, and climbed hills, all the while keeping the pendant safely tucked in his bag. The further he went, the more excited and nervous he became. He had never been to the capital before. It was a place of great wonder, a city filled with tall buildings, busy streets, and people from all over the kingdom. When Luca finally arrived, the sight of the capital city took his breath away. The streets were crowded with merchants, soldiers, and people of all kinds. The city was filled with noise and movement, and Luca couldn't help but feel out of place. He walked through the streets, looking for the palace. He had heard stories about the king's kindness, and he hoped that bringing the pendant would help him find answers. As Luca approached the palace gates, he was stopped by a tall man in fine clothes. The man had sharp eyes and a cold expression. "Where do you think you're going, boy?" the man asked, eyeing Luca suspiciously. I have something important to show the king, Luca replied, holding up the pendant. The man's eyes widened slightly when he saw the pendant. That belongs to the royal family, he said, his voice cold. I'll take it from here. You should leave. Luca hesitated, but refused to hand over the pendant. I need to speak to the king, he insisted. It's very important. The man scowled. I don't think you understand. Only someone of royal blood can wear that pendant without harm. If you're truly worthy, then try it on. But I warn you, if you're not, it could be dangerous. Luca felt a chill run down his spine. He didn't know what to do, but he couldn't back down now. He held the pendant in his hands and slipped it over his neck. At first, nothing happened. But then, a warm feeling spread through Luca's chest. He felt stronger, braver somehow, as though the pendant had given him power. He looked up at the man, who was watching him closely. You're unharmed, the man muttered, his voice filled with disbelief. Luca nodded, unsure of what to say. The man looked around nervously before he spoke again. Come with me. I'll take you to the palace. Luca was taken to the palace, where he was shown to a small room. He couldn't believe he was inside the grand walls of the palace. The hallways were lined with beautiful paintings and tapestries, and the air smelled of fresh flowers and sweet perfumes. It was a world he had never known, a world far removed from the simple life of a fisherman. The man who had brought him to the palace introduced himself as Lord Garrick, the king's advisor. He was polite, but distant, and Luca couldn't shake the feeling that Garrick was watching him closely, as though he was waiting for something to happen. You will stay here for a while, Garrick said. But first, I suggest you work in the stables. There are many things to learn in the palace, and it will be good for you to start with something simple. Luca agreed, though he wasn't sure what to expect. He was shown to the stables, where he met the stable master, an older man named Bert. Bert was kind and showed Luca how to care for the horses and clean the stables. Luca worked hard, and it wasn't long before the other servants began to notice his strength and willingness to help. He was friendly and eager to learn, and soon he made friends with the palace staff. One day, while Luca was grooming a horse, he noticed a woman standing nearby. She was tall, with long dark hair that shimmered in the light. She wore a beautiful gown, and there was something about her that caught Luca's attention. It was the king's daughter, Princess Marisol. She smiled as she approached him. You must be the new stable boy, she said, her voice warm but curious. I've heard about you. You work hard. Luca smiled back, a bit nervous. Thank you, Your Highness. I'm just doing my job. Princess Marisol laughed softly. "Please, call me Marisol. You don't have to call me Your Highness all the time. We're all people here." Luca nodded, feeling more at ease. Over the next few days, Marisol visited the stables often. She would talk to Luca about her life at the palace and ask him about his village by the sea. Luca, in turn, told her about the simple joys of fishing and living by the ocean. Despite their differences, they found themselves growing closer. As Luca continued to work at the palace, his bond with Marisol deepened. She was unlike anyone he had ever met. She was kind and intelligent, with a keen sense of humor that made him laugh. But there was something more to her than just her beauty and charm. Luca sensed that Marisol was lonely, trapped in the palace with few friends to confide in. One evening, after a long day of work, Marisol invited Luca to join her for a walk in the palace gardens. The moonlight bathed the flowers in a soft glow, and the air was cool and refreshing. "I've never been outside the palace much," Marisol said, her voice soft. "I wish I could experience life as the people do." Luca looked at her in surprise. "But you're a princess. You can do anything you want." Marisol shook her head. "Not really. My life is planned out for me. I must marry someone suitable, someone who can help the kingdom. But sometimes I just want to live without all the expectations." Luca felt a pang of sympathy for her. He didn't know what it was like to be a princess, but he understood the feeling of wanting to be free. As they continued their walk, Luca felt a strange connection to her. It was as though their worlds were closer than he had thought. Over the weeks that followed, Luca settled into a routine at the palace. He spent his days working in the stables, caring for the horses, and helping the other servants. Though he was treated well, he couldn't help but feel that something wasn't right. Lord Garrick, the king's advisor, seemed to keep a close eye on him, always watching from afar. Luca tried to ignore it at first, focusing instead on his growing friendship with Princess Marisol. They spent more time together, and Luca began to understand how trapped she felt in the palace. Despite her position as a princess, Marisol longed for the freedom and simplicity of life outside the palace walls. But it was clear that the palace, and particularly Lord Garrick, wasn't as welcoming as it seemed. One day, while Luca was cleaning the stables, he overheard a conversation between Garrick and one of the guards. "He's too close to the princess," Garrick said in a low voice. "I won't allow it. If that boy is the one, if he really is the king's son, he must not be allowed to rise above his place." Luca froze, heart pounding. He wasn't sure who Garrick was talking about, but the mention of the king's son made him uneasy. He had started to suspect that Garrick wasn't the trustworthy advisor he appeared to be. There was something about him that didn't sit right, like he was hiding something important. Luca couldn't ignore the feeling in his gut. He knew he had to be careful around Garrick. The more Luca thought about it, the more he began to suspect that Lord Garrick was not just concerned about the pendant. He might have something to do with the disappearance of the king's son. One evening, when the palace was quieter than usual, Luca decided to explore. He had heard rumors from the servants about hidden rooms and secret passages within the palace. With Marisol's help, he had already found a few interesting places. But this time, Luca was determined to uncover something that could answer his growing questions about his past. He slipped quietly through the hallways, avoiding the guards and servants. After some time, he found a narrow door at the end of a dark corridor. The door was slightly ajar, and the smell of old books and dust filled the air as he pushed it open. Inside, the room was filled with dusty bookshelves, old scrolls, and faded maps. At first, it seemed like just another forgotten storage room, but Luca's eyes were drawn to a large wooden chest in the corner. With a mix of excitement and nerves, he approached the chest and opened it carefully. Inside, he found a collection of old papers. Some were letters, while others were official documents. Luca couldn't read all of them, but one particular letter caught his eye. It was a letter addressed to the king, mentioning the birth of a son who had gone missing. The words were written in haste, and the letter seemed to have been hidden away on purpose. Luca's heart raced as he read the letter. The missing prince, the king's son, had been taken from the palace many years ago. But there was something else. The letter also mentioned a trusted advisor, someone close to the king, who had been involved in the child's disappearance. Luca could hardly believe what he was reading. The name of the advisor was not mentioned, but it didn't take long for Luca to suspect who it might be. Lord Garrick. Luca quickly hid the papers back in the chest and shut the door. His mind was spinning. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to come together, and it wasn't good news. He had to warn Marisol. But how could he tell her without revealing too much? Now, from this point, the story will be continued in the next part.